If you bought a 3080 shortly after they came out, you may have very well paid near the MSRP for a 5090. These things were $1,500 plus, 5090 MSRP is $2,000. There's been inflation, so somebody who bought a 3080 may actually be in the market for a GPU in this price range. But how much better is the experience? 3080s still do an amazing job in a lot of games, but as we're seeing right here, 4K RT Overdrive, that's going to be a place where the 5090 is delivering triple the performance. But again, you know, there's a value consideration here, because if you, for example, popped over to Jawa and was looking at used systems, you could get an entire 3080 10GB system with a nice Ryzen 5 7600 32GB of RAM. This looks like a very solid system, nice fractal case, everything like that. For $1,000, that is half the MSRP of just a 5090, not that 5090s are even selling at MSRP. So there's definitely something to be considered here, but I still think it's an interesting comparison. And also, definitely check out Jawa.gg if you're gonna be selling your old GPU to fund your upgrade, because Jawa is the place where you buy, sell, and upgrade between gamers. And if you buy here, I can get you $10 off your first purchase using code ON10. And a huge thanks to Jawa sponsoring today's video to allow me to run the massive amount of benchmarks that I've been doing. If you're looking for a PC build, you can find exactly what you're looking for with the PC Finder. And again, used prices are generally going to be the only place you're going to get a reasonable deal on a graphics card in our current market. You can shop PCs by theme if there's a certain style that you are looking for. There's rare finds. And again, you can make listings yourself, set your own prices. You can even make a side business selling on Jawa, but you can also just take all the convenience and click the Get an Instant Offer button for an instant offer on your CPU or GPU. To help you quickly fund your upgrade without any of the hassle. So whatever you're looking for here, Jawa has you covered. They also have a Discord community with tens of thousands of people, at least over 10,000 last time I checked, that can give you one-on-one build advice, feedback on your build, tons of happy user reviews. And again, thanks to them sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to the side-by-sides though. So how much better is a 5090 compared to a 3080? Like I said here, in 4K path tracing, the 5090 is right at home. Using DLSS performance with the new transformer model, which does run better on the 50 series than the 30 series, we are getting triple the performance. 92 FPS on the 5090 versus 29 on the 3080. By the way, the 3080 I'm testing in this video is the 12GB model. Its overall raw power is only a few percent higher than the 3080 10GB, but the extra VRAM here is going to help me keep matched settings more often. If you're on the 10GB card, your performance would be similar, but you would more frequently need to turn down textures or other settings to not cripple the performance in that manner. Performance here is going to be a little bit lower than if you have like a 3080 Ti, but all of this video is going to be fairly relevant for the various versions of the 3080. Now, if we drop down to 1440p resolution and use DLSS quality rather than performance, again, RT Overdrive's a bit much to ask of the 3080. We're getting 37 FPS here with the new transformer model, and the 5090 sitting at a nice 108 FPS, almost 3 times the performance. And by the way, just to be clear here, when I say I'm using DLSS, this is without frame generation, which the 50 series has access to, but the 30 series would have to use, AMD frame generation, something like that. You wouldn't have access to the DLSS frame generation. Anyway, so it is looking like the 5090 does provide a much better experience with the path tracing modes. However, it is important to also note that the older CNN model of upscaling does run better on the 3080 than the newer transformer model does. So if you switch over to the CNN model, the 3080 does become a bit more usable here. Still only 47 FPS in the built-in benchmark, but again, that's better than being in the 30s. I think it's the new ray reconstruction algorithm that's especially heavy with the new transformer model on 30 series cards and older, whereas 40 and 50 series cards tend to do a bit better with it. Anyway, a little more playable here. You could maybe go to a more aggressive DLSS upscaling setting, get the 3080 somewhat playable at 1440p path tracing. Now, if you drop down to 1080p and try to run at native res, the 5090's killing it. Don't know why you got a 5090 for 1080p. Maybe you're ultra esports player, but you still play some AAA games. The 5090 is right at home at 99 FPS. The 3080 is hitting 38, so you would still need to use upscaling to get path tracing going in Cyberpunk. That being said, you could easily just not use path tracing, and the 3080 can play this game absolutely fine. And that's the important thing to keep in mind throughout this video, is you don't necessarily need to upgrade, you might just need to turn down graphics settings in certain games. Let's go ahead and jump to some other games. This is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle and at 4K Supreme, which is not the path tracing mode, but is the max settings that isn't path tracing and does include some ray tracing. 4K Supreme DLSS quality. I actually had to turn the texture cache setting down on the 3080 to get within its 12GB VRAM buffer. That puts the 5090 twice as fast at 162 versus 79, but do note that once I did adjust the texture cache, the 3080 is actually playing this game completely fine at 4K DLSS quality. And at 1440p Supreme with no upscaling, the 3080 is doing just fine, 90 FPS, and the 5090 is hitting 175, again, almost twice as fast, but again, the 3080 is still delivering a good experience here, and that's, I think, really important to keep in mind throughout this video. Now, 4K epic settings, hardware RT on in a big Unreal Engine 5 graphical showcase like Silent Hill 2, the 3080 is only hitting 27 FPS and the 5090 is hitting 66, putting it more than twice the performance. However, if you go to DLSS performance mode, now the 3080 is hitting 55 FPS, which in a game this slow-paced is perfectly fine. And the 5090 is at 114, more than twice the performance. But again, it's not like the 3080 is unusable here, and you could just turn down graphic settings as well. Speaking of which, if you turn hardware RT off, but still keep epic settings otherwise, now the 3080 is hitting 32 FPS at 4K native, and the 5090 is hitting 73. So again, more than twice as fast on the 5090, but what if we use DLSS? So using DLSS quality, for example, gets the 3080 up to 49 FPS. You go down to DLSS balanced or turn things down a little bit more if you wanted more performance beyond that. 5090, though, hitting 113 FPS is more than twice as fast. If we drop down to 1440p, epic settings with ray tracing on, so totally maxed out, no upscaling, the 3080 is only hitting 47 FPS. It's a slow-paced game. You could play it like this, but it might not be your preferred settings. The 5090, on the other hand, 100 FPS, you're all good. Just max things out, no need to worry. Kicking on DLSS quality though, 3080 is up to 66 FPS. In this kind of game, that's perfectly fine. So completely maxed out at 1440p, other than upscaling at the quality setting. The 3080 is giving you a good experience here. 5090, a little less than twice as fast though, at 127 FPS. So definitely a better experience. The 1440p epic settings with hardware RT turned off gets a 3080 up to 54 FPS, no upscaling required, but the 5090 is over twice as fast at 122 FPS. If we move on to a different Unreal Engine 5 showcase, this one doesn't feature any hardware RT, and the high settings are the highest available in the game. We see Hellblade 2 Senua's Saga running at 33 FPS on the 3080. The 5090 is running at 76 FPS, putting it more than twice the performance. However, if you go ahead and kick on DLSS quality, the 3080 does jump to 54 FPS, and again, this is a very slow-paced game. That's actually very playable here. 5090, on the other hand, though, hitting 111, more than twice as fast. If we are playing at 1440p, the 3080 can actually max the game out at 55 FPS, perfectly fine in a game this slow-paced. 5090 is offering a much higher refresh rate experience, though, at 115 FPS, more than double the performance again. Now, if we switch over to Final Fantasy XVI, at 4K Ultra settings, the 3080 is only good for 33 FPS, and the 5090 can just max things out, hit 78, and more than twice as fast, and you don't need to upscale or turn anything down unless you want to. If you do want to, if you use DLSS Performance Mode, the 3080 does go over 60 FPS here, hitting 64, and the 5090 is more than twice as fast at 135. But again, the 3080 is still delivering a good experience here. At 1440p Ultra, the 3080 is hitting 55 FPS. It might not be quite where you want, but this is native 1440p maximum settings. The 5090 is hitting 117, again more than twice as fast, but again, you could easily turn things down slightly or use DLSS on the 3080. if you wanted a higher refresh rate experience. If we switch over to God of War Ragnarok, 4K Ultra settings, that is maximum settings here, the 5090 is cruising right along at 128 FPS, no need to upscale or do anything. The 3080 is hitting 50 FPS, it's completely playable, but you might want more performance than that. Now, if you just go ahead and kick on DLSS quality, I think the 3080 is good here, 72 FPS. Otherwise maxed out settings, DLSS quality at 4K looks perfectly good. The 5090, on the other hand, hitting 170 FPS, is, again, more than twice as fast and delivering a much higher refresh rate experience. But again, the 3080 is doing just fine. Now, at 1440p Ultra settings, the 3080 is hitting 71 FPS at native resolution. No need to turn anything down or upscale unless you really wanted to. 5090, on the other hand, is a high refresh rate, 124 FPS. Not more than twice as fast, though. At Horizon Forbidden West, the 4K very high settings, which is the maximum settings the game has to offer, the 3080 is hitting 50 FPS. It's playable, but you'd probably want a higher frame rate. The 5090, on the other hand, can just max things out at 4K, don't need to turn anything down or upscale, you're hitting 121 FPS. If you do just kick on DLSS quality, though, the 3080 reaches 68 FPS, so perfectly fine experience. Only sacrifice to visual quality is DLSS, which at quality settings at 4K looks just fine. 5090 is hitting 155 FPS, putting it a little more than twice as fast. At 1440p maximum settings, no upscaling, the 3080 is cruising right along, 78 FPS average. The 5090 is hitting 175 though, putting it more than twice as fast. But again, the 3080 is doing a good job here. Ghost of Tsushima at 4K very high settings, maxed out, no upscaling. The 5090 is cruising along at 119. The 3080 is delivering less than half the performance at 51. Again, it's playable at max settings 4K native here, but probably a good idea to kick on at least DLSS quality. If you do that, the 3080 is doing just fine. 77 FPS average here. I think you'd perfectly enjoy the game. DLSS quality at 4K looks good. 5090, though, hitting 170 FPS, more than twice the performance of the 3080 here. 1440p max settings, we don't need any upscaling or to turn anything down on the 3080. Hitting 84 FPS, single-player game, this is just fine. 5090, though, delivering more than twice the performance at 179 FPS average. If we switch over to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 to get a multiplayer title tested, here I've turned down to basic settings rather than max settings because I think that's more representative of how people play competitive games. Oftentimes it's best to turn down graphic settings in order to reach a higher frame rate for competitive purposes, but also to declutter the visual experience. It's often easier to spot enemies if there's less foliage and debris and flatter textures and things like that. Anyway, 3080 is delivering 94 FPS at a native 4K and could easily use like performance mode upscaling for a significant boost. 5090 though, hitting 204 FPS, more than twice the performance. At 1440p basic settings, the 3080 reaches 154 FPS. This is perfectly fine. If you're not getting the kill, it's probably a skill issue. 5090, on the other hand, is starting to get CPU limited at 301 FPS. So it would have actually been capable of more, and I'm on a 9800X3D here, so it's not like it's a weak CPU. Anyway, that is our results game by game. Let's go ahead and get an overall summary and my thoughts on the overall experience. So, let's do some graphs. This is a graph showing the performance advantage for the 5090 versus the 3080 in all of the tests that I ran. So these are not frame rate numbers. When it says 217 at the top there, that means that in Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K RT Overdrive DLSS performance using the transformer model, that the RTX 5090 was delivering 217% more performance. That's a lot more performance. Anyway, on average, using the geomean of these results, the 5090 is 125% faster, which is 2.25 times the performance. So again, it's averaging more than double the performance. If you prefer to see this chart sorted as best result for the 5090 versus worst advantage for the 5090, it looks like this. But again, these are some massive advantages. It's 2.25 times the performance. Now, some of these results, especially when we get to the lower resolutions near the bottom, could actually have the 5090 a little bit held back by the rest of the system. So if you want a more accurate result of how much faster the 5090 truly is, it might make sense to sort for just 4K native results. So if I sort for 4K native resolution, even if these aren't the settings you would actually use, it's more likely to represent the full performance advantage of the 5090. And in this case, it's 2.35 times the performance, or 135% faster, 2.35 times the performance. So that's what I'm getting overall in summary. But is it worth the upgrade? And that's where we run into the issue right now. 5090s are basically out of stock new right now. I can't find one listed at a major retailer, and they're being kind of scalped right now. It's not uncommon to see them listed at well over $2,000, sometimes $3,000 or more, if you're watching this video at the time of filming. That's pretty crazy high. Now, again, if you're somebody who bought a 3080 for, $1,500 or more when they were new, maybe you're somebody with enough disposable income that you're just like, whatever, I just wanted to see if it was worth it. And I would say the main reason the 5090 would be worth it is if you're trying to either get a very high refresh rate 4K experience rather than just like a 60 FPS 4K experience, the 5090 is much more well suited to that task. Also, if you're trying to use path tracing, especially if you're trying to do it at 4K resolution, the 5090 really does deliver a transformative experience in that kind of testing. However, if I just randomly pick somewhere else in the video where, hey, look, we're at 1440p, maybe turn down the settings slightly or kick on DLSS quality, the 3080 is still delivering in some of the most demanding games. We're talking a big Unreal Engine 5 game, maxed out, hardware RT on. It's still delivering 60 FPS or better, oftentimes maybe just having to kick on DLSS quality. Again, even at 4K, oftentimes just kick on DLSS quality and you're fine, and oftentimes 1440p, you can just max out some of the latest UE5 games without much issue. Again, a lot of games here, the 3080 is still delivering. That being said, I am doing this with the 3080 12GB. If you're on the original 10GB model, you're probably more likely to be feeling a little bit of that texture, sometimes texture settings having to be tweaked and things like that, which can be a little bit frustrating to deal with. But I would say if you're on a 3080 right now on a 1440p display, my gut feeling is to tell you to wait to upgrade. If instead you were watching this video, you were actually wondering, should I buy like a used 3080 or should I just go all out? I have a lot of money, but is it really worth it? Again, like I said, you can buy an entire pre-built 3080 system with a modern motherboard platform and CPU with 32 gigabytes of RAM in a beautiful case for $1,000. Again, compare that to spending $3,000 plus just on the 5090 GPU, and I would say if you're targeting 1440p or so, this kind of system is going to absolutely deliver. Again, link to Jawa in the video description and or pinned comment, and I can save you $10 off your first purchase using code OWEN10. And again, a huge thank you to Jawa sponsoring today's video, which makes it possible for me to run the ridiculous number of benchmarks I've been doing. I hope all of you have an excellent day.